Imagine that you are flying in a small plane between the mountains because the mountains are so high so your small plane simply can't fly over them. It has to maneuver between the tops of the mountains, and then your plane clings to a rock, abruptly loses speed and falls on the side of the mountain. You had survived, but what to do next? In 1942, on February 16th, a Soviet biplane took off from Dushanbe and headed for Korog, but soon the weather deteriorated sharply and the plane could not reach its destination at an altitude of 4,500 meters in the Yazgilan Gorge area. The plane caught on a rock and crashed on one of the peaks of the Adudi Pass. There were 4 men and 1 woman with 2 children on board, and they all survived. But what happened next? Their fate is still shocking. On that board were pilot Vasily Nyaznichenko, Major Andrei Maslovsky, Captain Mikhail Vikrov, an employee of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Tajikistan Alexander Zhukovsky, and the wife of the head of the airport Anna Gurieva with 2 children, 10-year-old Sasha and 6-month-old Valerie. Anna also had a 3rd son Vladimir, who was with his father at the time. All this happens in February, and the winter in these places is severe. The plane on which they went to Herat was relatively reliable. Here's what is said in the test record of this aircraft. The aircraft is simple in piloting, quite stable, flies well, speed losing is slow. A spin is possible only at a speed of 70 km per hour or with intentional input. At a speed of 80 km per hour, it steadily parachutes. Blowing in the cockpit is insignificant. Flight without goggles is possible. The plane rises to a height of 5,000 meters in 30 minutes 32 seconds. At 6,000 meters, it develops a maximum speed, which is 145 kilometers per hour. But, obviously, in conditions of poor visibility, the pilot simply lost control and the plane crashed. Here's the information about the flight given in the sources. At about 3 p.m., when the plane was approaching one of the passes of the gorge, having passed the Yazgilam River, the plane was thrown down. As a result, the plane caught on the landing gear. The plane remained controllable, but then a second throw occurred, the engine stalled and the plane crashes into a snowdrift. The plane completely crashed. The fuselage and the left upper plane remained intact. The pilot and passengers are alive with minor bruises. One of the most dangerous air routes in the world passes over the Pamirs, and planes try to bypass the mountains. It is always dangerous to fly over the mountains because there is no room for error. There is simply nowhere to land the plane, there are peaks everywhere, and it is impossible to maneuver between the mountains in an emergency. So, after the plane had crashed, the passengers and the pilot were at an altitude of 4,400 meters. It was a real trap. There is a risk of altitude sickness. The disease begins due to the lack of oxygen. After all, the higher the mountains, the harder it is to breathe. So, at 4,400 meters, mountain sickness can already begin because these were unprepared people who is not spending much time on the mountain area. Symptoms of mountain sickness: heart palpitations, shortness of breath, nosebleeds, severe dehydration, but in addition, at night the temperature drops sharply to -30, and heavy snowfalls reduce visibility and interfere with movement. In such conditions were all those who were on board. A few hours after the fall, pilot Nyaznichenko and Captain Vikrov, who received only a few bruises in the crash, set off on a hike to the Pianj River, which should have been somewhere nearby. Obviously, they, like any other crew of the plane, had a map, but could not find the river. There were only rocks and ice mountains around, and soon they returned. They examined the crash site and found out that the plane fell on the edge of a glacier that hung over a deep abyss. Then the survivors decided that they should stay on the plane and wait for the search parties from Korog, and they began to distribute food. As it is written in Andrei Maslovsky's diary, which he began to write on the day of the crash, they had 600 grams of butter, 1,000 grams of sausage, 1,200 grams of cheese, 1 can of crabs, 3 bottles of vodka, and there was not any drinking water at all. It was difficult to hope for a quick rescue, so they decided to eat once a day, eating only a few grams of food. Instead of a water, they melted ice, but in the mountains, ice and snow do not quench thirst like ordinary water. The only warm place is the cramped passenger cabin, designed only for 4 people. It was impossible to stand up at full length there and even stretch out legs. They literally had to sit on each other's laps. Looking at the photos of this plane, it's scary to imagine how all these people fit there. 3 days passed like this. 2 of them was snowing heavily with wind. It was simply impossible to get out of the cabin. On February 19th, the men again made an attempt to find salvation, but after walking 6 kilometers through chest-deep snow, they returned very tired. Here are the entries Andrei Maslovsky made in his diary these days.
February 19th. After a modest breakfast, despite the bad weather, Nyasnichenko and Vikrov walked 6 kilometers to the gorge. The passage turned out to be impossible. They returned extremely tired. Snow height was 3,900 meters. We're at chest level. The rest were on the plain. February 20th. Nyasnichenko, Zhukovsky, and Vikrov left at 8:30 in the morning to look for a passage to Pianch, and while overcoming the pass near the accident site, Zhukovsky fell down about 1,000 meters along with a snow avalanche. He severely bruised his right knee, arrived at the plain on his own, where he was bandaged. Nyasnichenko and Vikrov also returned to the plain, drank some water, played Sasha's childhood dominoes, and began to spend the 5th painful night without sleep and rest, not to mention food and water, sat on each other's knees in a 4-seater compartment, tried every night to go to the fuselage of the aircraft, but they immediately froze and left from there to the cramped cabin of passengers. Sometimes they went out to eat snow. February 21st, Nyasnichenko and Vikrov tried to look for a way out to Pianch, but after climbing about 150 meters they returned to the plain. Girivo warmed up a glass and a half of water per person, played dominoes, and started heating water for dinner. There was no other food. The forces of everyone begins to leave. They climbed into the cockpit for a long, painful night. February 22nd, all day long we sat in the cabin. It was impossible to get out. A blizzard raged. We dug out the entrance to the cabin 2 times. We didn't make water because of bad weather. We ate a small piece of snow. At 2021, we ran out into the street. Someone heard 3 shots. I made 3 return shots, but nothing was heard.
The crew spent another week on the plane eating the rest of the food. Valery, Anna's youngest son, could not stand such a test and died on the night of February 23rd to 24th. After the entry about this event, the following said,
"We have breakfast, ate the last 150 grams of cheese and 20 grams of butter. The food was completely gone. We are poorly searched or not searched at all."
The men decided to go in search of salvation again and reach the goal for sure. Anna and the children were left on the plane. In the diary of Andrei Maslovsky, the following is said about this.
At a short meeting, it was decided that, due to the expiration of the last strength, lack of food, water, cigarettes, and matches, the presence of bad non-flying weather, there is no hope to wait for the plane for 10 and 11 days. When you feel that you have 2 to 3 days left to live, we decided that on February 24th we would find a way out to Pianch or die on the way. Vikrov, Nyasnichenko, and Zhukovsky agreed to go in the morning.
So, Anna was left alone with the child. She took out a notebook and made the following entry.
After seeing the men off, me and Sasha began to insulate the cabin. There were 3 matches left. We heated the water and began to prepare for another painful night.
There were many more such painful nights to go through. But what was happening at that time to the men who left to seek help? After a few days of travel, 3 men nevertheless reached the settlement, where they were met by local residents and transported to Korog. The 4th passenger of the plane, Zhukovsky, died on the way. Doctors diagnosed 3 men with severe frostbite. 2 of them had their legs amputated. The pilot, Myasnichenko, was much more fortunate because he was wearing warm boots that were given to the pilots. The men found people it's time to tell about the woman and child they left in the mountains, but they didn't say a word about them. They didn't even mention Anna and Sasha. Local residents later claimed that if they had learned that Anna and her son were waiting for rescue, they would have carried out a search operation and saved them, but survived men mentioned Anna and Sasha only in Korog, saying that most likely they had already dead. And so without search operations will pass another 2 months. What was Anna writing in her diary at that time?
February 27th. In the morning we woke up and waited all day to be rescued. Hearing any sound, we think someone came for us. We didn't even heat the water. We waited and didn't eat anything. February 28th. We are still waiting for the expedition all day. We no longer have matches. We collect snow in a jar and put it in a cabin under the window. The days are cold with wind, even there are snowfall. We didn't leave the cabin. We really want to eat, but all food is over, and we came up with the idea of cutting off a piece from Valerie. That process was difficult. How is it possible to eat your son and brother? But we want to eat, and so from that day on we began to cut off pieces from him. March 3rd to 4th. We are waiting for the exposition, obtained water in the same way, drank half a liter, ate a piece of meat again. But no one came for us. Hope was almost gone. We began to wait for the plane, but there was no plane either. We wanted to strangle ourselves, but we are afraid. Maybe someone will save us. 11th of March. We got up in the morning, didn't get out of the cabin, it was foggy, but the weather was suitable for flying. We collected a liter of snow in the broken window, ate a piece of meat. The weather is already very good, but for some reason there is no plane and no expedition. We ate, sat down and talked. How can we get to Korog? We thought for a long time, but didn't come up with anything, because there was no strength left. March 14th. The weather was good in the morning. We woke up and pulled Valerie out of the fuselage, cut off the meat from him and ate. We set to draw water. The weather began to deteriorate. Clouds covered the mountains. We got half a liter of water, drank, played dominoes. We constantly look out the window. But there is no one. We began to save meat so that we could live more time. March 16th. The weather is good. We ate in the morning, took water, drank. Now we are sitting and waiting for the plane or the expedition. We don't leave the cabin. As soon as we heard the hum of the engine we jumped out, but there was no motor, no expedition. Valerie is already running out. It remains to eat for several times. Only the brains are left, and 4 pieces of bacon with meat, and then we don't know how to live. Probably remains to die, because there is no hope for salvation. We have been sitting for a whole month, and there is nothing from either side. 18th of March. We couldn't even get out until 10 in the morning. We sat down and waited for the windows to thaw. The weather was good. We were waiting for the plane. The cabin doors were hardly opened. The plane was cleaned. We lay down. It was very warm. Sasha and I stretched out, and until 3 in the afternoon we could rest. Then a breeze blew. We climbed into the cabin and began to insulate it and collect water. We collected half a liter, put brains in a small cup, ate and drank. The sun set and we began to prepare for a cold night.
Sasha's letters.
March 18, 1942. Hello Dad and Vladimir. I send you greetings. Dad, Mom and I have been starving for a whole month and have eaten Valerie. Dad, why couldn't you even leave the plane and look for us? Hello Nikolai and Vitia and Aunt Varya. I send you greetings. I wish you all the best. Grandma, pray to God to get us out of this lair. Hello Grandfather Pasha, Lenia and Nira and Shura. I send you greetings. I wish you all the best. Nothing more to write. Goodbye.
Anna writes to her husband.
To my husband Yuriv, goodbye my friend. We will never meet again and shake hands with each other. Your heart is free, but you will not find such a happiness. Vanya, dear, we have been sitting for a whole month and no one flies or comes to us. On February 28th, Maslovsky, Nyasnichenko, Vikrov and Zukovsky left us to look for people. We hoped for them. They told us that when they got there, they would send help for us. Vanya, if they got out, then tell them on my behalf that they are bastards. I told them that when they get there, they will forget about us. Vanya, we saw them off. Sasha and I really want to eat and we decided to eat Valerie. On March 17th, we already finishing him. We save his brains. We will eat in small pieces. Maybe we will last until the end of the month. Maybe even someone will save us. We want to live so much. March 21st. We got up in the morning. The weather was very bad. It was snowing. There was no visibility. We sat down, ate last brains. But for some reason Sasha ate poorly and so our meal ended. I decided to give him my blood. I pierced a vein in my arm with a needle, took half a glass and gave it to him. He drank, asked for water, drank and fell asleep. He began to feel bad after an hour, rushes to run, makes noise.
Dad, come here. Bring Vladimir. I'll look at him.
And again a cold night came. I didn't sleep all night. I kept Sasha until the morning. He either sleeps or again rushes to the windows to run. Goodbye. My advice to you, dear Vanya, give Vladimir to mother and Vera, let them raise him, but only under your supervision. Constantly send him all the products. I don't want him to live with his stepmother. I beg you, do it. I have 2,150 rubles of money with me. 1950 are sewn up in my jacket. The remaining 200 rubles are in my bag. It's Mom's money. She sold 2 of her paper handkerchiefs and wanted me to buy 3 silk handkerchiefs, red, green and white. Do it, buy it for her, I beg you, and send it to her. March 22nd. Sasha is sick again, delirious, making noise, crying. The weather is very bad. Like on the 21st, Sasha came to his senses at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and began to tell me.
Mommy, I'm in a bad condition. I would like a glass of hot sweet tea. Mom, I probably won't see my dad and Vladimir. Thanks Mom for taking care of me. If you get to Korog, order kishmish from Aunt Varya. Bake different donuts and remember me.
And he lost consciousness again. It began to get dark. The weather was raging and cold night again. March 23rd. We got up early. The weather was bad again, like yesterday and at 10 in the morning. My beloved boy Alexander Ivanovich Guriev has died, the only thing he said before death.
Goodbye, my dear mother, I don't want to die.
I cried, pulled him into the fuselage, made an entry in my diary. The weather is raging, the whole plane was almost covered by snow, and I was left alone like a beast in a lair, with no one to talk to. I am going to bed alone, I'm afraid. I wanted to strangle myself, but I'm very afraid. I'll endure it to the end, but I'm so thirsty and I am going to bed for a cold, painful night. March 24th to 25th. The weather is still raging, heavy snowfall, a big hurricane. I am very thirsty. I ate snow, but nothing helps, can't eat any meal. I am very afraid. On the night of the 25th, I heard the cries of some animals. When my son Sasha was here, we sang songs and played dominoes with him, told each other fairy tales, and now I feel very bad alone. March 27th to 28th. The weather is good, there isn't a single cloud. Valerie's skull was lying on the fuselage. I chewed it. I already had no strength, but I didn't want to touch Sasha. I thought someone would find me. But there was no strength, and on March 28th I cut off half of his arm. I cut it into small pieces, put it on the windowsill in the sun. His hand dried up a little. I took half a liter of water and ate. April 6th. The weather is very bad. Snowfall with a strong wind. I didn't even get water. In the morning, ate a piece of meat and sat down to write a diary, and at that moment the sun set. The weather calmed down. I decided to prepare for a painful night. April 13th to 14th. For 2 days, I sat without water. On the 13th, there were 3 wolves and they were very close to the plane. Climbed through the windows. I climbed into the fuselage. It was very cold there. I was freezing all the night long. Could hardly wait for the morning, and then they left and didn't come back. What pain am I going through here? Now I close up the windows so that no one couldn't climb by them. April 24th. The night was very cold. In the morning the weather was very good. There was not even a single cloud in the sky. The sun rose. I ate iced brain and went out to wait for the plane or the expedition. I lay on the plane for almost a whole day, fell asleep. It was very hot. Some birds appeared on the mountains. I have been seeing them for the 2nd day. Today even flies were flying. It was so warm. I couldn't stand the heat. I went into the cockpit because I knew that the plane wouldn't fly for me. There is no one and nothing. It's so insulting because I've been sitting for the 3rd month already. Is that how they search? They could have saved us long ago. April 26th. I have been sitting and waiting for 70 days, but no one comes for me. I would like to know what is happening in the war. Farewell to my family, dear Vanya, Vladimir, mother, sister Veria, Dmitry Nikitovic, Nikita Ivanovich, sister Fields, nephews Kolya, Jenya, Nuzia, and daughter Shuran. Goodbye forever. We will not see each other again. Take care of Vladimir, because he is now left alone. With my sons Sasha and Valerie, we died here. We starved for a whole month, waited, thought that we might be rescued, but no, we did not even wait for a piece of bread. Vanya, pilot Zurevlev owes me 50 rubles, and I took 10 kilograms of potatoes from him. You give him back. Farewell, my dear friend Vanya, Sasha, and I kiss you and Vladimir tightly. I don't owe anyone anymore. 2 caps for you here, and 3 pairs of slippers. Send them out to the guys. Goodbye. Promise me that you will do everything I wrote. Send some potatoes to Veria. April 30th. I look forward to the expedition every day, because the mountains are almost all open. Many birds have appeared on the mountains. They sing day and night. There are also a lot of flies. Probably, there will be many animals here soon. My notebook is over and, probably, the day of my salvation has come. After all, tomorrow, May 1st, they must either find me from an airplane or an expedition will come. I have 2 days of food left. If they don't find me, I will have to die after living on an airplane for 75 days. It's so insulting. 1st of May. The weather in the morning is very bad. Snowfall with a strong wind. At 12 noon everything stopped. The sun came out and the weather became good, but there was no plane, no expedition. I cried a little. How insulting. People are celebrating May 1st, and I am sitting dying cause of hunger. I'm all over. There is brains that are left only for 3 time. May 7th to 8th. The weather is very good. There was no plane on the 7th, but on the 8th it flew in one direction and I did not hear their back way. There is nothing to eat now. I am sitting and waiting. Maybe the expedition will come. If they don't find me before the 15th, I'll cut off 2 toes, and then we'll see.
On May 8, 1942, Anna Gurieva was discovered by a special search group, which went to the crash site to find the plane and, following the order from Moscow, remove the engine from it, and in extreme cases, the pistons for the needs of the war. The approximate coordinates of the location of the aircraft were reported by the pilot Nyaznichenko. The composition of the search group of 16 people included Anna's husband Ivan. When the team went in search, they found Zukovsky, who did not reach the village with 3 other men. He fell into the abyss. Zukovsky was lying by the river, and pistol shells were lying around. There was not a single cartridge in the clip of his pistol, which means he shot, called for help, but his friends simply abandoned him, most likely that Zukovsky simply could not withstand a long trip with a leg injury. After 3 days, the expedition found the crashed plane itself. Approaching him, they saw Anna alive, exhausted. She was sitting on a plane and basking in the sun. She looked at a group of men, saw her husband, and said,
Vanya, you are probably married?
Yuriv really got married a month ago.
Where is the son? Where is Sasha?
Over there.
She answered and pointed to the skull lying nearby. Soon a criminal case was opened on the fact of leaving a woman with children in a hopeless situation. All 3 men received different terms of punishment. The pilot was sent to a penal battalion, where he soon died. The fate of Anna is not exactly known. According to some sources, Yuriva was examined for more than a year in Dushanbe in a psychiatric hospital. Not any mental abnormalities were found. After her recovery, she worked as a nurse. Anna got married and had children and grandchildren. She died in 1992 in Tajikistan. Until the last days of her life, she said that she did not want to remember those 3 months, but she could not forget them either. The fate of her husband and son Vladimir is unknown. Writing this diary supported her thought process and urge to live. The wreckage of that same aircraft was taken from the mountain, and in 1985 the aircraft was restored in 7 years according to the drawings, and now it is stored in the Aviation Museum, and only a few people knows what fate this aircraft and its passengers had.